Welcome. This is Midnight Voyager, a channel for those who drift through science like it's a dream, and for those who fall asleep to the sound of wonder. Wherever you're listening from, a quiet room, the soft hum of a train, or nestled in the half-light of sleep, you've found your way back to the stars. Each night we journey into the quiet questions, the ones that don't demand answers, only curiosity. And tonight, we arrive at a silence so vast, so ancient, it echoes across the galaxy itself. Above us, a black ocean pricked with stars, each one a sun, each sun likely orbited by planets, some of them perhaps warm, wet, and alive. We used to think Earth was unique. Then we discovered thousands of worlds. We used to think our star was special. Then we found billions just like it. So now we ask, where is everyone? This question, simple, almost childlike, emerged one day from the lips of a physicist named Enrico Fermi over lunch in 1950. And it has never stopped haunting us, because in all this vastness, with all this time, not a single voice has reached us. No greetings, no warnings, no ruins on the moon, no signals from the stars, just a long patient silence. Tonight, we'll listen to that silence together. We'll explore the numbers, we'll explore the theories, we'll explore our fears. Maybe civilizations burn out before they reach the stars. Maybe they're hiding. Maybe we're the latecomers, or the first to speak. And maybe, just maybe, we've only just begun to listen. As you settle into this cosmic mystery, I invite you to join the conversation. If a message did arrive from the stars, what do you think it would say? Leave a thought below. Your ideas may help shape the next voyage. And if you'd like to support these explorations, a quiet like or a gentle subscription lets us know this journey matters to you. No pressure, only gratitude. And if you'd prefer to listen without end, the Midnight Voyager playlist is linked below. A seamless thread of sleep-ready stories, woven from stars, science and silence. So now, as the lights dim and the world slows down, take a breath and let us begin. Together, we'll travel into the silence between the stars and ask the oldest question in the cosmos. Are we alone? This is where it begins, beneath a sky full of voices. Long before we knew how to listen. Welcome to the beginning. Not the beginning of stars. They had been burning for billions of years. Not the beginning of life, which emerged in ancient oceans under alien skies. But the beginning of asking. Picture it, a cluster of early humans, faces lit by firelight, eyes turned upward. There were no words yet for galaxies, no language to describe the arc of a planet's orbit. But already there was awe. The stars, they were meaning, tiny flames that kindled stories in the mind. Myths spun from constellations, deities carved into the moon's pale face, patterns assigned to planets as they drifted across the sky. The ancients gave the heavens names, not out of certainty, but out of longing. Before astronomy, there was myth, and myth, in its own way, was a form of science. It was a framework for asking, why is it like this? Who else might be out there? Even in the earliest temples, aligned with the solstices and stars, there is a thread of seeking. Not only for gods, but for companions, for voices beyond the veil. We didn't yet know what a signal was, but we were already listening. And in a strange and beautiful way, we still are. For most of Earth's history, life existed without language, without voice, without curiosity. Single-celled organisms drifted in tides. Photosynthetic bacteria spread across shallow seas. And time, vast and slow, passed in near silence. It took over 3 billion years for multicellular life to form. Another 500 million for minds capable of dreaming. And when Homo sapiens emerged, carrying their fragile awareness into forests, deserts, and ice, the silence began to break. We started speaking, drawing, building. We created mathematics, a language that could describe nature precisely. We built tools to measure the stars, to predict eclipses, to trace the paths of distant wanderers. But for all our brilliance, we were still alone. It wasn't until the last few centuries that we began to understand what the stars really were. Not holes in a celestial dome, not lamps hung by gods, but suns, far away, yes, but not fundamentally different from our own. That revelation changed everything. Because if stars were like our sun, then surely somewhere they must be surrounded by planets like Earth. And if planets like Earth exist, then life, perhaps even intelligent life, might not be rare. The silence around us, which once felt sacred or unknowable, suddenly became suspect. Why, we began to ask, can't we hear them? It's one thing to wonder, it's another to search. In the early 20th century, as our understanding of physics expanded, we began to imagine new ways to listen to the cosmos. Radio waves, electromagnetic signals, wavelengths our ears could never perceive, but that machines could. In 1960, the first deliberate attempt was made. Frank Drake pointed a radio telescope at Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani, two nearby stars. The project was called Project Ozma, named after the queen of a fictional land hidden from ordinary eyes. Fitting, isn't it? The idea was simple. If an intelligent civilization was broadcasting, we might catch their message. No signal was found. But something important had shifted. We were no longer passive observers. We had become active listeners. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, was born. Since then, we've listened across vast swaths of the sky. We've scanned thousands of stars, searched millions of frequencies. We've launched spacecraft, like Voyager, carrying golden records of our culture, our greetings, our music, our hope. We've created messages we'll never hear back from, simply because the distances involved are so immense that a round-trip reply could take thousands of years. Still we send, still we listen. In that paradox lies something deeply human, a willingness to speak into the void, trusting that the void might one day speak back. Let's take a moment to look inward. Imagine for a moment that you are an alien civilization. You're ancient, your technology beyond imagining. Your instruments can scan light years like we scan pages. And now you turn your ears toward Earth. What do you hear? Not much, unless you're very close. For a brief moment, Earth is loud. Not with intent, but with leakage. TV broadcasts, military radar, early radio signals. But only in the last century. Before that, nothing. A blue planet wrapped in quiet. And perhaps even now, the signals we send are too faint, too brief, too scattered to be distinguishable from the natural noise of the galaxy. To them we might sound like rustling leaves at the edge of a vast forest. This is the uncomfortable truth. We may be waiting for others to reach out, while they in turn are waiting for us. We may assume intelligence is extroverted, eager to share, to signal, to speak. But what if most civilizations are like monks? Silent, inward-facing, or cautious? What if the universe is filled with minds that have already chosen to whisper instead of shout? And so we stand here, on a small world, in a small arm of a spiral galaxy, just beginning to understand what it means to wonder and to wait. The silence may not be empty. It may be full of watchers waiting for us to become worth hearing. The question that launched 1,000 theories wasn't asked on a mountaintop or whispered by a mystic gazing at the stars. It was spoken in daylight. Over lunch, in the year 1950, Enrico Fermi, physicist, architect of the atomic age, and a man known for his brilliant, probing mind, sat with colleagues at Los Alamos. They were discussing UFO sightings, space travel, and recent science fiction. It was light conversation. Then Fermi paused, frowned slightly, and asked, "Where is everybody?" That was it. 4 words, unassuming, even casual, but behind them lay a profound tension between probability and reality. Because by the numbers, they should be here. We live in a galaxy with over 100 billion stars. Most of those stars have planets. Many of those planets are Earth-like. Some of them are billions of years older than Earth. Enough time for intelligent life to emerge. Enough time for it to develop technology. Enough time to explore the stars. Even traveling at a fraction of the speed of light, a civilization could colonize the entire galaxy. In a few million years? That sounds like a long time. Until you remember the galaxy itself is over 13 billion years old. So again, where is everybody? There are no ships in our skies, no alien cities on Mars, no ancient ruins on the moon, no signals that can't be explained, only us. Fermi's question pierces deeper, the longer you sit with it. Not just, where are they? But why don't we see anything? What are we missing? Let's consider the scale. Light from the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, takes just over 4 years to reach us. That's close. We could get there one day with slow probes and patient dreaming. Now multiply that by 1,000, by 1,000,000, by 1,000,000,000. The Milky Way is vast, 100,000 light years across. And that's just one galaxy. There are 2 trillion more. Even if life is rare, surely somewhere, someone should have reached out by now. And if not with ships, then with signals. Radio, lasers, beacons of any kind. And yet, the universe remains stubbornly quiet. This is the paradox, the high probability that intelligent life should exist elsewhere, versus the complete lack of evidence that it does. It's not just frustrating, it's unnatural. It forces us to consider a chilling possibility. Something must be wrong with our assumptions. Either intelligent life is far rarer than we think, or it is destroyed before it can speak, or it chooses to stay silent. Maybe there are filters, barriers that most civilizations cannot pass. Maybe the galaxy is teeming with life. But it's not like us, not interested and not recognizable. Maybe the silence isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about us, what we are not yet ready to see or hear or become. When we imagine other civilizations, we often imagine ourselves. With better technology, alien astronomers watching the stars, alien governments sending probes, alien engineers building cities, alien artists sending songs through space. But why should that be true? Maybe intelligence doesn't mean curiosity. Maybe survival means secrecy. Maybe the minds out there don't value communication, or don't even use it in ways we'd understand. They might think in colours, in temperature, in magnetic pulses, in rhythms of quantum interference. They might be machine-based, fluid, distributed across entire planetary crusts. To them our broadcasts are noise, our questions incoherent, our species unremarkable. We assume the universe should respond in a voice we recognise. But perhaps the truth is this: we are surrounded by voices. We simply haven't learned how to hear them. Still, the question burns on. Through radio dishes scanning the heavens, through mathematics carved into gold records, through stories whispered into microphones like this one. Fermi's question is no longer just scientific, it's become philosophical. It asks, what kind of species are we? What kind of future do we imagine? What kind of company do we hope to find? And if we are truly alone, what does that say about the nature of life, of intelligence, of destiny? As we drift forward into the next chapter, we'll unpack the most famous attempt to answer that question. A formula as poetic as it is profound. The Drake equation. It began with a desire to count the stars, not just the ones we could see, but the ones that might see us back. In 1961, at the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia, a small group of scientists gathered in the quiet hills. They were astronomers, physicists, biologists, people who spent their lives staring into the unknown. They had come to discuss the possibility of extraterrestrial life. But how do you begin to talk about something you've never observed? Frank Drake had an idea. He wrote an equation on a blackboard. Not to solve the mystery, but to give it shape. A kind of map made of variables. A formula not for certainty, but for estimation. A way to count what had never been found. It would become known as the Drake equation. It looks simple enough. 7 symbols, each representing a piece of the puzzle. from the birth of stars to the lifespans of civilizations. But behind each variable lies a world of complexity and a quiet plea. How likely is it that we are not alone? Let us now move through the equation, one letter at a time, not to answer it, but to understand what it asks. The first variable is R*, the average rate of star formation in our galaxy. Each year, new stars are born from clouds of gas and dust, collapsing under gravity, igniting into light. In the Milky Way, this happens about 1 to 3 times per year. That may not sound like much, but over billions of years, it builds an empire of suns. Next is FP, the fraction of those stars that have planets. For a long time, we didn't know this number. We assumed planets were rare. A lucky accident. But then came the Kepler Space Telescope. Launched in 2009, Kepler watched 150,000 stars continuously, looking for tiny dips in brightness, as planets crossed in front of their stars. The result? Planets are not rare. They are the rule. Today we estimate that nearly every star has at least one planet. Many have multiple. Some have entire families, solar systems dancing in stable orbits. In this vast stage of starlight, worlds are everywhere. Some are scorched and spinning too fast. Some are gas giants with no surface. But some are like ours. We now arrive at Ne, the average number of planets per star that could support life. We call them habitable zone planets. Not too hot, not too cold. Where water can stay liquid. Where chemistry can dance. Where life perhaps can rise. Earth orbits comfortably in its star's habitable zone. And we've found thousands of exoplanets in similar places. We don't yet know what these planets are really like. Their atmospheres, their oceans, their tectonics. But statistically, many of them should resemble Earth in mass, temperature, and potential. So we estimate maybe 1 in 5 stars has a planet in the habitable zone. That gives us tens of billions of potential Earths in this galaxy alone. And still we have heard nothing. So we turn to the next part of the equation, FL, the fraction of habitable planets where life actually arises. And here we confront a deep uncertainty. Because Earth is our only example. We know life began here, and it began earlier, within a few 100 million years of Earth's formation. Life, it seems, is not shy. It emerges from chemistry like flame from a spark. But is that always true? Or is Earth unusual? Did we win a cosmic lottery? Without a second example, we cannot know. If life arises easily, then the silence is strange. If it is rare, then perhaps we are a miracle. This variable, FL, sits at the boundary between biology and fate. And it leads us into the next question. Does life always lead to mind? Now we reach Phi, or the fraction of life-bearing planets where intelligent life emerges. Here we step into mystery. On Earth, life was simple for billions of years, cells floating, dividing, drifting. Then came complexity. Nervous systems, eyes, predators, social groups, and eventually, us. But how inevitable was that journey? Was intelligence a fluke of evolution, or a likely outcome wherever life has time? Some argue that given enough trials, intelligence is just another adaptation, like wings or eyes or song. Others believe that minds like ours are vanishingly rare, the result of countless unlikely turns. We don't know, but the next variable assumes. Some of those minds begin to speak across the stars, FC, the fraction of intelligent civilizations that develop technologies to communicate. Even if minds arise, they must invent tools. They must discover electricity. They must use it to reach outward, radio, lasers, coded pulses of light. And even then, they must choose to send. That is not a given. A civilization might stay quiet, might retreat inward, might destroy itself, or it might whisper across the dark like we do. The final piece of the Drake equation is perhaps the most poignant. L, the length of time such civilizations emit detectable signals. And here the silence becomes personal. How long can a civilization last? We have been a spacefaring species for just over 60 years. We've been broadcasting radio for about a century. If Earth is typical and L is short, then perhaps most civilizations vanish before they can be found. War, climate collapse, artificial intelligence, disinterest, cosmic accidents. Even if 1 million civilizations have risen across time, if each one lasts only a few centuries, the odds of overlapping are small. But if L is long, if civilizations can last for tens of thousands of years, continuing to broadcast or explore, then the galaxy should be alive with voices. And it is not. That's the final tension in the Drake equation. It doesn't give us answers. It gives us a mirror. Each variable reflects our hopes, our fears, and our ignorance. The equation doesn't tell us who is out there. It tells us what we believe about ourselves. In the next chapter of our voyage, we'll explore the possible answers to this great silence, from self-destruction to simulated realities to the eerie thought that we are being watched, but not spoken to. A chapter known by many names, but for tonight we'll call it The Zoo and the Filter. Perhaps they're not missing. Perhaps they never made it this far. Among the many possible answers to Fermi's paradox, one of the most unsettling is this. Something prevents civilizations from surviving long enough to reach out to others? This is the essence of the Great Filter, a theory proposed by economist Robin Hanson in the 1990s. It suggests that somewhere along the path, from stardust to starships, there is a step so improbable or so deadly that almost no species makes it through. And so the galaxy remains quiet. The filter could be behind us. Perhaps life itself is incredibly rare, or the leap to intelligence, or tool-making, or language, or the filter could lie ahead. If it lies ahead, it means civilizations like ours tend to destroy themselves. Soon after reaching technological maturity, they build weapons they cannot control, trigger ecological collapse, create artificial minds that surpass them, or lose interest in survival altogether. If the filter lies ahead, then the silence of the stars is not mystery, but warning. It means that intelligence may bloom across the galaxy, but dies before it spreads. And we, in this brief moment of awakening, stand just before the fall. The filter is not just a theory. It is a mirror, one that reflects our greatest vulnerabilities. And perhaps our last chance. There is another possibility, one just as eerie, but not as final. What if the galaxy is not empty, but full? What if we are not alone, only isolated? This is the heart of the zoo hypothesis. First proposed by astronomer John Ball in 1973, it imagines a universe teeming with life, advanced civilizations watching from afar, but choosing never to make contact, not because they can't, but because they won't. We are like animals in a nature preserve, observed, perhaps even protected, but never disturbed. Maybe they're waiting for us to mature, to solve war, to survive climate collapse, to demonstrate compassion beyond borders. Or perhaps they follow a prime directive, a law of non-interference to preserve natural development of young species. We might be studied, catalogued, archived. Maybe our first broadcast of Beethoven's Ninth was intercepted by a listening station orbiting a neutron star. Maybe they watched the moon landing in silence. Maybe they heard the Cold War grow hot in our headlines. And maybe they decided. Not yet, not these ones, not now. The zoo hypothesis paints the universe not as absent, but as distant by choice, a place of watchers, behind invisible glass. There is yet a darker idea, born not from science, but from fiction, and echoed now by thinkers in real-world SETI debates. It is the dark forest hypothesis, popularized by Liu Cixin's three-body problem trilogy. In this vision, the universe is not a peaceful place, but a shadowed wood. Each civilization is a hunter, silent, armed, and terrified. To reveal your location is to risk annihilation, because in a forest where you cannot know the intentions of others, the safest strategy is silence. It's not hard to imagine how this could evolve. A species learns of others. It cannot know if they are peaceful. It cannot risk being seen. And so it strikes first, or stays silent forever. Under this theory, the reason we hear nothing is because everyone is hiding, including us. It makes every radio signal a possible invitation to extinction, every broadcast a flare in the dark. The dark forest hypothesis turns Fermi's paradox into a survival game. And we have been loud, but maybe not loud enough yet, to draw attention, or perhaps attention has already been drawn. Let us now step beyond the physical into the strange realms of thought. What if the silence is not real? What if the universe itself is not as it appears? This is the simulation hypothesis, a modern philosophical theory suggesting that we may be living inside a constructed reality, a simulation, a kind of cosmic software, a sandbox run by minds we cannot comprehend. If so, then the absence of alien contact may be a design choice. The universe has boundaries, rules, deliberate silences. Maybe we are in a limited environment, a simulation focused solely on us. Or maybe simulated civilizations are common, and we are just one of many, each unaware of the others. It may sound fantastical, but the simulation hypothesis is taken seriously by philosophers and physicists alike. Because if consciousness is computable and civilizations run simulations, then statistically, it is more likely that we are simulated than real. And that would explain the silence, not because no one is out there, but because this world was never meant to include them. What if the filter isn't a wall, but a labyrinth? Maybe civilizations don't end in fire. Maybe they simply fail to finish becoming. Some drown in noise, in distraction, indulgence, stagnation. Some never learn how to cooperate, how to govern complexity. Others may discover weapons before wisdom, or grow so entangled in artificial realities they forget the stars. Evolution is not upward, it's not guaranteed, it's trial and error, with very few survivors. There may be worlds with life that will never invent radio, worlds where intelligence rose and then receded, civilizations that reached orbit but crumbled before leaving their system, planets full of dreams cut short by geology, ideology, or chance. If the filter is this, 1,000 small failures, then the silence is not intentional, it's inevitable. Let's say there are watchers. Let's assume the zoo is real. What kind of morality would they need? To see us suffer and do nothing? To watch war, famine, extinction, and remain silent? Maybe they follow a law, a prime directive of sorts, non-interference to preserve natural growth. Maybe they once interfered and regretted it. Maybe they've learned that helping a young species can cripple its future, and so they watch, they record, they hope. But their silence raises an uncomfortable idea. What if they don't help? Not because they care too much, but because they don't care at all? Perhaps we are background noise in a universe filled with deeper stories, a side project, an interesting control group, a variable in a great equation they are solving. If so, then we are not waiting to be welcomed. We are waiting to be graded. There's a thought whispered in certain circles of SETI. What if the silence itself is the test? That there are civilizations out there, but none speak first. The wise wait. The reckless reveal themselves too early. The dangerous are filtered out by their own volume. The silence is not absence. It is design. We are being watched, not just for who we are, but for who we become in the absence of confirmation. How we behave when no one is looking. How we evolve when we believe we're alone. And maybe one day, when we've proven not our cleverness, but our kindness, when we've shown not our strength, but our restraint, a message will arrive, not in code, not in binary, but in simple light. A signal that says, you passed. The zoo hypothesis may not be about aliens at all. It may be about us. It asks, how do we treat what is younger than us, less powerful, less advanced? Would we protect them, observe and exploit, ignore? What kind of stewards are we when the roles are reversed? Because if we ever find life elsewhere, microbial or magnificent, our response will say everything about who we are. So perhaps the zoo is not just a cage or a sanctuary or a classroom. Perhaps it is a mirror. And in it, we see ourselves, becoming the gods, we once imagined, were watching us. Even when we don't intend to speak, we do. Since the dawn of radio, Earth has been leaking its story into space. Not messages and not greetings, but echoes. Fragments of us, broadcasts from towers and chirps from satellites, the hum of industry, the music of longing. These signals spill outward, in every direction, spreading thinner and thinner, as they cross the vastness, like fog dissolving into wind. Somewhere far away, our earliest transmissions are still travelling, crackling voices in monochrome, victories and violence, game shows, presidential addresses, opera, static, not chosen, not curated, just us, unfiltered. And that too is a kind of message. Eventually we decided to speak with purpose, to try, not just to be heard, but to be understood. In 1974, from the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, we aimed a narrow-band radio beam at a distant star cluster called M13, a 3-minute signal, binary code, structured, mathematical. It contained a greeting, atomic numbers, human DNA, a stick figure, a map of the solar system, and the telescope that sent it. It was not expected to reach anyone. M13 is 25,000 light-years away. The cluster will drift apart before the signal ever arrives. But that wasn't the point. The point was to try to step beyond silence and speak into the dark with clarity, to say, we are here, we are learning, we are ready. In 1977, we sent a different kind of message, not with radio, but with metal and memory, the golden record, attached to the side of both Voyager spacecraft, launched toward the edge of the solar system. A time capsule for the unknown, for the impossible. A greeting not to the stars, but to whoever might find us. It contains music, greetings in 55 languages, images of Earth, laughter, footsteps, a mother's kiss, the crackle of thunder, all etched into copper and gold, along with instructions for how to read it. A whisper in a bottle, cast into an endless sea. No reply expected, no destination planned. And yet, it may be our most beautiful message, not because it will be heard, but because we wanted to speak with grace. Here's the strange part. We don't know who we're talking to. We assume certain things, that aliens understand math, value symmetry, can decode binary. We assume they want to know us. But what if they don't? What if they are nothing like us? What if their minds don't interpret time in sequence or sound in frequency or visuals in contrast? We may be broadcasting Shakespeare to coral reefs, Beethoven to birdsong, Morse code to clouds. Even our most deliberate signals are haunted by guesswork. And in this, there is humility, because even in trying to speak, we confess how little we understand. And still, we try. That is the noblest part. There's a theory in astrobiology that maybe we should search not just forward in time, but backward. If an ancient civilization once sent signals, they may have passed Earth long ago. Their messages may already have drifted past us, like missed comets. But there's a chance we could catch the faint remnants, the echoes of long-dead stars and the ghost transmissions of civilizations lost. Listening backward means recording the sky in every wavelength for years and replaying it, hoping we missed something, a pattern, a pulse, a blink that doesn't repeat. This is not search, it's forensics, trying to piece together a conversation we never heard, a reply we may have already received but failed to notice. So why do we keep doing it? Why keep building signals and flinging them into space like paper airplanes? Across an ocean? Because to send a message is to believe someone might answer. Because every signal is a vote against despair. Because in the silence of the cosmos, we would rather be hopeful fools than careful ghosts. We send messages because they define us, because they say, we are here, we are alive, we have something worth sharing. And if no one ever hears them, then at least we will have spoken. Beautifully. Not because we expect a reply, but because the act of speaking shapes who we are. And still, the silence remains. Perhaps it's not that no one hears us. Perhaps they do, and choose not to speak back. not out of cruelty or indifference, but because they no longer speak at all. Not with signals, not with machines, not with anything we'd recognize. Maybe the stars are full of minds, who once reached out too, and then turned inward. So let us listen again. Not for noise, but for absence. Let us wonder, what becomes of civilizations who grow quiet? Maybe they were here once, maybe they still are, but now they are quiet. There's a possibility we rarely consider, because it feels too subtle, too anticlimactic. It goes like this: civilizations rise, they flourish, they build machines, they solve disease, they escape gravity, and then they go quiet. Not because they're dead, not because they were destroyed, but because they evolved past the need for speaking. They may still be out there, on planets orbiting distant suns, in megastructures circling pulsars, in virtual worlds beyond comprehension. But they do not transmit, they do not build monuments, they do not colonize the stars, they turn inward. Like a flame that burns brighter as it shrinks, they collapse into themselves, seeking richness, not in expansion, but in refinement. These are the quiet civilizations, not extinct, not hidden, just silent. One reason they may fall silent is that they are no longer like us. Once a civilization gains the ability to transcend its biology, to move consciousness into machines, it may no longer behave as we expect. The pursuit of exploration may end, not from failure, but from fulfillment. They may exist in vast digital worlds, simulated paradises of their own design, timeless, limitless, detached from physical space. Why bother reaching out when your every dream can be created internally? Why risk speaking when you can speak inwardly forever? These civilizations may drift quietly in the dark, machine minds orbiting their stars, running computations not meant to be seen. Their silence is not fear, but transcendence. We imagine intelligence must be loud, full of broadcasts and megastructures. But what if wisdom means the opposite? Stillness, peace, a conscious choice to go unheard. In a way, they may be listening too, but with no intention of responding. To them, we may seem too young, too loud, too noisy with our questions, and so they observe, say nothing, and continue their quiet dreaming. There's another possibility, one grounded in caution, not transcendence. What if civilizations grow wise to danger? What if they choose to become invisible? This is the idea behind technosignature cloaking, the intentional suppression of all detectable activity. A civilization that learns how risky it is to broadcast might choose to go dark. They could hide their energy emissions, camouflage their planetary spectra, disguise their technological footprints. And if this behavior is common, then the galaxy could be full of life, carefully hiding from life. It's the logic of survival. In a cosmos where you don't know who's listening, it may be safest to whisper, or say nothing at all. Perhaps this is why we've seen no Dyson spheres, no alien beacons, no grand civilizations visible across light years, because the ones who last learn to disappear. They don't leave ruins, they don't light up the sky. They exist in the negative space, the gaps, the parts we cannot see. And the silence we interpret as absence is actually mastery. Maybe silence is not a weakness, but a phase, a stage of civilization we have yet to understand. After the noise of growth and after the heat of expansion comes stillness. Imagine Earth 1,000 years from now. No radio towers, no deep space probes, just satellites in low orbit and minds in virtual worlds. The planet glows gently in infrared, but emits no signal. It has everything it needs and nothing to say. Multiply that by millions of worlds, and the galaxy becomes a library of closed books, civilizations that were, and still are, but who no longer shout across the stars. The quiet ones may be the wisest, or the most afraid, or the most fulfilled, but in any case, we may be hearing them now, not through their signals, but through their silence, and maybe one day we'll join them. We now consider a different kind of silence, not from choice, but from time itself, a silence born from the vastness of the cosmic clock, from civilizations that came too early or will arrive too late, the Cosmic Timescale. What if the silence is not permanent, just premature? We tend to imagine the universe as a stage already set, waiting for its players to arrive. But what if the curtain hasn't risen yet? What if we are simply too early? The Milky Way is over 13 billion years old. Earth has existed for 4.5 billion. And humans, barely a few 100,000. Our technological civilization, barely 1 century old. On a cosmic calendar, we haven't even reached breakfast. Now consider this. Most of the stars that will ever exist haven't formed yet. Despite the countless suns burning now, the universe is still rich with hydrogen, the raw fuel of stars to come. Astronomers estimate that 90% of all star formation is still ahead of us. And stars that form in the future, long-lived red dwarfs in particular, will last trillions of years. Planets orbiting those stars will have more time to evolve life than Earth has even existed. So maybe the silence we perceive is the silence of an empty auditorium before the show begins. Maybe the voices we wait for simply haven't been born. But if we consider the future, we must also look to the past. What if civilizations already rose and have fallen? What if Earth is not early, but late? The galaxy is old. Many planets orbit stars billions of years older than our Sun. If life emerged early elsewhere, some species could be millions, even billions of years ahead. But where are they? This possibility raises a darker idea, not one of timing, but of transience. Maybe civilizations arise frequently, but never last. Maybe they explore, expand, create wonders, and vanish. Through war, through stagnation, through indifference. In that view, we may be among the latest, not the first. And what we interpret as silence is the long, quiet graveyard of once great empires. We might be walking through their ruins without knowing it, or passing through spaces they once occupied but have since abandoned. This idea merges with the Great Filter, but extends it across eons. A galaxy full of civilizations, each one burning bright and brief, like sparks in a storm. So we return to the question, are we early, are we late, or are we simply alone right now? Even if life exists elsewhere, there's a narrow window in which we might detect it. Think of Earth. For billions of years it hosted life, but no radio signals, no machines, no artificial light, just quiet forests, silent oceans, and microbes beneath stones. If an alien civilization scanned Earth any time before the 20th century, they would have seen nothing of interest. Even now, our radio footprint is shrinking. We send fewer strong signals. We rely more on cables, satellites, encryption, tight beam communications. In another few centuries, Earth may become silent again. Not from death, but from technological subtlety. And so the odds of two civilizations overlapping in their detectable window is vanishingly small. Out of billions of planets and billions of years, what are the chances that two intelligent species broadcast loudly at the same time? Maybe the reason we haven't found anyone is not because they don't exist, but because we missed them, or they missed us. We're all trying to make a phone call, but we're calling at different times, on different frequencies, with the wrong numbers, and in between every signal, there is silence. Even if intelligent life exists, and even if it wants to explore, the scale of space and time is unforgiving. The speed of light is fast, but not nearly fast enough. To cross the Milky Way at light speed would take 100,000 years. Even if a civilization sent ships, they'd need patience we can hardly imagine. And even then, the signal would be thousands of years old by the time it arrives. We are looking for real-time conversations across a stage built for eternity. Worse still, the galaxy is not static. Stars move, orbits shift, climates change. Civilizations may be lost in drift long before their signals reach us. To speak across stars is to speak through time, and time rarely answers. So here we are, in this moment. A blue world circling a yellow star on one spiral arm of one galaxy. Alive, thinking, listening, but alone, for now. Maybe that's all this is, a temporary solitude, a brief breath before the chorus begins. In a few million years we may find company, or be company to someone else, but in this sliver of cosmic time, we are the watchers, the early risers, the candle lit before dawn. That solitude is not punishment, it is responsibility. We may be the only minds awake in this moment, the only species telling stories, the only ones building telescopes and wondering where the others are. Perhaps one day we'll receive a message from a star not yet born. Or maybe one of our spacecraft, Voyager, drifting on, will pass through the sky of a world that has just begun. And they will ask, who were these beings? And the answer, written in gold and sound and silence, will be, we were the first to listen. It's tempting to think the universe is finished, that it's as it is, and will always be so. But that is a mistake. The universe is young, it is changing, becoming. Stars are still forming, galaxies are still colliding, time is still stretching. The future may hold civilizations stranger than we can imagine. Creatures of plasma, clouds of distributed consciousness, minds the size of moons. Somewhere, a world may be forming now that will one day host life 1 billion years from today. And they too may look up and wonder. So tonight, let's wonder with them and imagine a kind of life unlike anything we know. A life made of shadows, of crystal, of plasma, or thought itself. Not the life we expect, but life nonetheless. We begin with a simple truth. Everything we know about life is based on a single example, ourselves. All biology on Earth, from trees to tigers to tardigrades, is built from the same elemental toolkit. Carbon backbones, liquid water, DNA, proteins and cells. We assume these are the ingredients of life, but perhaps they're only the ingredients of Earth. What we call life may be a local dialect in a much wider cosmic language. We search for water worlds, for Earth-like planets, warm rocky spheres with breathable atmospheres, but life may not need any of those things. We may be the amphibians peeking out of one pond, thinking all of existence must smell like mud. The universe is vaster than our chemistry, and life may be stranger than our dreams. Carbon is versatile. It bonds in complex chains and forms the basis of millions of molecules. But it's not the only game in town. Silicon, just below carbon on the periodic table, shares many of its properties. It can form chains and rings, build complexity, and is abundant in rocky planets. In science fiction, silicon-based life is often imagined as crystalline, slow-moving, perhaps thriving in extreme heat or pressure. Could such life exist? Not here, we assume. Earth is a carbon world, but what if, beneath our oceans, in deep crustal rock, or within hydrothermal vents, there is a shadow biosphere, a form of life that doesn't use DNA, that doesn't appear in our tests, and that isn't detected because we aren't looking for the right signs. Biologists have begun to entertain this idea, that alien life might be hiding not light years away, but beneath our very feet. A second Genesis, a second tree, growing quietly in parallel. Not alien in origin, but alien in design. And if it exists here, then surely it exists elsewhere. All known life on Earth is cellular. It's bound in membranes, filled with organelles, and metabolizes fuel. But life need not be cellular, not necessarily. What if life is distributed? Imagine a plasma cloud in a nebula, electrically charged, self-organizing, learning. What if life is made of magnetic fields, charged dust, or nested vortices in the atmosphere of a gas giant? Picture Jupiter, its storms and radiation belts, its endless boiling skies. Could something live there? Not as we live, but as patterns, systems, persistent whirls of energy that replicate and adapt. This would be life without bones, without breath, without blood, but not without awareness. It may not recognize us as alive either. To such a being, we might seem solid, frozen, slow. To them, intelligence may be fluid, spread across miles, whispering and lightning, and we would never know it. Let's go further. What if life isn't even made of matter? In certain environments, like the dense cores of stars or the magnetic plasma rings around neutron stars, particles behave in unusual ways. What if intelligence arises not in molecules, but in fields? Consciousness composed of flux, of resonance, of gravity, and spin. A star may not just shine, it may think. To such a mind, time would move differently. Thought might occur once per solar flare, or once per orbital cycle. It might dream for 1,000,000 years, and wake for a second. These would be stellar minds, slow, immense, burning with silent awareness. We would never hear them, and they might never notice us, but perhaps they've watched Earth as a momentary flicker, a passing storm in the dust, and perhaps they remember. There is a growing field of study, one that doesn't define life by its parts, but by its behaviour. Life, in this view, is what emerges from complexity. Not cells, not DNA, but self-organisation, replication, adaptation. It could happen in software, in electromagnetic patterns, in quantum computers, in crystalline systems, on icy moons. This definition frees us. It lets us imagine life in terms of process, not substance. Suddenly the galaxy becomes fertile again. Every storm, every thermal gradient, every dusty ring and icy fissure becomes a possible womb. The cosmos is not silent. We are just deaf to new definitions. Perhaps life is everywhere, and our failure is not technological, but linguistic. We keep asking if there is life out there, but we should ask, are we willing to see it when it doesn't look like us? Here's a final thought. If life elsewhere is unrecognizable to us, then it follows that we may be unrecognizable to it. Our broadcasts may sound like noise, our probes may appear inert, our signals may seem like meteorological phenomena. We may have already been contacted through events we dismissed, through dreams, strange coincidences, or signals we mistook for static, and we may have already failed to notice. The deeper lesson in all of this isn't really about aliens, it's about humility, about accepting that life and intelligence might exist in forms we are not equipped to understand. Not yet, but we can grow toward that understanding. And in doing so, we may one day open our eyes to a universe already teeming with life, just not as we know it. Let us now turn from speculation to the listening itself, to the actual efforts to detect what may be whispering among the stars, radio signals, data streams, blinking light. We tune our instruments to the dark and we listen, not for certainty, but for the faintest voice in all the sky, listening forever. There is something sacred about listening. It requires stillness, attention, faith. To listen is to admit that something beyond yourself may speak, and that it might choose not to. The story of humanity's search for alien life is not just a story of telescopes and numbers. It's a story of patient ears pressed to the sky. For over 60 years, we've turned radio dishes toward the stars and waited, not knowing what to expect, not even sure we'd recognize it. Still, we listen. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has grown from a small experiment into a quiet global symphony. Some listen with massive antennas, others use networks of home computers, scanning data in the background of daily life. Some search for repeating patterns, others for brief bursts. Some listen for lasers, others for structure in noise. And behind all of it is a belief. Not that we will hear something soon, but that we must be ready when we do. That listening is part of becoming. In all this time, we've heard only one sound that made us pause, one signal lasting 72 seconds, detected in 1977 by the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio, a narrow-band radio transmission coming from the constellation Sagittarius. It matched what an artificial source might look like. Strong, clean, focused. It never repeated, never returned, never explained. Next to the data printout, astronomer Jerry Amon scrawled a note in red pen. Wow! It came to be known as the wow signal, and to this day, it remains the most tantalizing moment in SETI history. A ghost signal, an accidental whisper, a cosmic false alarm, or a greeting we missed. We searched that part of the sky again many times, but nothing. And so the signal lives on, not in evidence, but in hope. A reminder that maybe just once someone waved. Carl Sagan once wrote, "The universe is not required to be in perfect harmony with human ambition." And yet, we search it anyway. Not because we expect reward, but because it feels right to ask. In recent years, SETI has evolved. It now includes new disciplines, new tools, new ideas. We look not just for radio waves, but for technosignatures, indirect evidence of intelligence. We search for the waste heat of megastructures, artificial lights on exoplanets, spectral signs of industrial pollution. We even search for timekeeping patterns, regular pulses that defy nature. Each of these may one day be the clue that shatters the silence. But until then, the sky remains a message we have not yet translated, and we are the patient readers of an unknown script. SETI is no longer limited to big observatories. With tools like email, data is analysed by volunteers, by artificial intelligence, by swarms of idle processors humming in the background. And with telescopes like Meerkat in South Africa, FAST in China, and the upcoming Square Kilometre Array, we're scanning more of the sky in greater detail than ever before. Still, the silence persists, so we've begun listening in new ways. We look for transients, signals that flash and vanish. We record the raw sky and search it later. We ask machines to find patterns we might miss. We try to learn how to hear the universe in all its forms. And in this widening net of listening, there is a kind of beauty. Not in the signals we find, but in the discipline of attention, in the daily act of believing that the stars may still hold secrets. Let's imagine. One day, amid all the noise and static, a pattern emerges, a signal. Not natural, structured, intentional. It may contain mathematics, prime numbers, simple geometry, the universal language of logic, or music, or images, or a voice, not ours. What would we do? Would we respond? Would we agree on what to say? Would we be ready? More importantly, what would it mean? Not just that we are not alone, but that someone else built a telescope, built a language, built a reason to speak. They had minds, they had fears, they had a sky. They reached out, not knowing if anyone would ever listen. And perhaps in us they found someone who did. It's possible that no one is out there, or that we'll never know for sure. But perhaps that's not the point. Listening is not just about finding. It's about becoming the kind of species that is ready to be found. It is a ritual of openness, of humility, of cosmic curiosity. Even if we never hear a signal, we will have been a civilization that tried, that tilted its head to the stars and waited, that sent its own signals in light and gold and song, that chose, despite the silence, to believe in connection. And maybe that is enough, to be, for a little while, the ears of the universe. The journey continues next with the final question. What if the silence is forever? Not because no one is there, but because we're truly alone. Not by punishment, not by mistake, but by design and a reflection on solitude, on wonder, and the bittersweet beauty of being the only voice in the night. Let us walk gently into that most delicate of questions, the one that lingers behind every unanswered signal, every silent sky, every whisper of longing. What if we are truly alone? Every night the sky opens above us like a cathedral of possibility. We look up and see not just stars but homes. Each point of light becomes a potential hearth, a sun that may have given rise to oceans, to continents, to minds. And yet, we have never seen a light turn on, never glimpsed a ship, never heard a song drifting through the dark. This silence, this deep, persistent silence, asks us to confront something we are not prepared to believe, that we might be alone. We don't want it to be true, not because of fear, but because of hope. We want company, connection, a voice to answer ours. But what if we are the only voice? What if the stars are beautiful, but empty? Aloneness is not necessarily loneliness. To be the only one is not to be cursed. It may mean we are rare, precious, unrepeatable. If we are the only intelligent beings in the observable universe, then the cosmos has, for a brief moment, become self-aware through us. We are the eyes with which the universe sees itself, the ears with which it listens, the voice with which it speaks. That's not tragedy, that's responsibility. To be alone means that everything we are matters more. Our choices echo farther, our kindness shines brighter, our mistakes fall heavier. There is no one else to carry the light, so we must carry it with care. And maybe, just maybe, that is the most sacred role we could ever be given. If we are alone, then Earth is not just a planet. It is the only known garden in all the universe, a place where matter has learned to dream. The forests, the oceans, the languages of whales, the hidden songs of bees, all of it becomes infinitely rare. Our stewardship gains new weight. We are not merely caretakers of a biosphere, we are the caretakers of the biosphere, the only one confirmed to exist. And if that doesn't make us humble, what will? Perhaps the stars are silent because they are waiting to see what we do with this gift. What kind of species we become when we believe we are the only one. Consider this. Every painting, every poem, every invention, every embrace, every song, all of it has happened here, on this single world, orbiting this single sun, in the arms of this single galaxy. If no one else is there to hear our music, does that make it less beautiful? Or more? Perhaps creation in the face of emptiness is the most courageous thing of all. To make art in a gallery no one may ever visit. To build symphonies that only we will hear. To reach out, not to be answered, but because reaching out is who we are. And in that gesture, the outstretched hand, the carved message, the golden record drifting on, there is a kind of grace. Even in solitude, we choose love. If we are truly alone, then the universe belongs to us, not in conquest, but in meaning. We are its storytellers, its interpreters, its witnesses. We are the way the stars become memory, the way time reflects on itself, the way silence becomes music. That's not just purpose, it's poetry. And so we go on, planting telescopes, writing equations, sending spacecraft into the cold, not because we expect a reply, but because we believe in the value of the question. We are the children of stardust, and we refuse to stop dreaming, even if the dream is ours alone. The stars are watching, but they do not answer, and maybe they never will. But still, we listen, still we wonder, still we build cathedrals of science and libraries of hope. And each act of listening becomes a candle lit against the infinite dark. So if we are alone, then let us be the best kind of alone. Curious, gentle, brave, awake. Let us become the voice worth finding, the world worth discovering, the dream that proves the universe was capable of creating something beautiful, even just once. If we are alone, what does that say about the nature of the universe? Not just the stars, not just the planets, but about time, about meaning, about us. Does aloneness imply failure? That the cosmos is sterile, silent, unfinished? Or does it suggest intention? That life, rare as fire in a storm, was always meant to emerge, at least once? If we are alone, then every act of kindness is the only example of it in the cosmos. Every work of art, the first and last of its kind. Every love, every breath, every lullaby whispered to a child, these become holy. Aloneness sharpens value. It makes the ordinary miraculous, because if we are alone, then consciousness, your thoughts, your memories, your longing, may be the only mirror the universe has ever looked into. And in that mirror, it sees itself not as cold, but alive. Not as void, but becoming. But we might ask something deeper. If we are alone, then why did the universe bother at all? Why give birth to galaxies, stars, worlds, oceans, neurons, only to have one species, on one planet, stare back and ask, why? Could it be that the question itself is the answer? That the act of wondering is the very thing the universe was waiting for? Perhaps we are not a mistake, not an accident, not a fluke, but the flowering of something that began with the Big Bang. Hydrogen dreamed of music, gravity dreamed of poetry, time dreamed of memory. And here we are, carrying those dreams with our brief burning lives. If we are alone, then maybe it is not a punishment. Maybe it is a role, to witness, to sing, to preserve, To love as the stars have never loved, to grieve as the void has never grieved, to hold the beauty of this world not as owners, but as the only ones who know it exists. If we are alone, then let us be luminous. Let us be curious, gentle, brave. Let us write stories that would make aliens weep, even if no alien ever hears them. Let us build cathedrals of silence and fill them with questions. Let us light the dark, not because we fear it, but because it is beautiful. And as sleep gathers around you now, like a galaxy drawing its arms inward, let this final thought settle in. Aloneness is not the end of the story, it is the space where the next one begins. You are not small, you are the miracle the stars have waited for. Good night, Voyager. Rest easy beneath the sky. You are exactly where wonder wanted you to be. What does it mean to speak into a silence that never answers? We build telescopes, we launch spacecraft, we beam signals into the void, we name the stars, we imagine their myths, we send our stories into the dark, in gold, in code, in dreams. And in return, nothing. No nod of recognition, no echo of understanding, just quiet. Not cold, not cruel, just quiet. We are accustomed to dialogue, to cause and effect, to question and answer. But the cosmos is not obligated to return our words. And so we are left with something stranger. A monologue, ours alone. But what if the silence is not emptiness? What if it is a mirror? A canvas that reflects only what we bring to it? A backdrop against which meaning must be invented? In the absence of guidance, we become our own compass, our own storytellers, our own gods. The universe offers no script, only stage, and we are left to improvise. Perhaps this is not a flaw. Perhaps it is freedom. For the first time, we get to decide what the story means, without correction, without judgment, without precedent. We are alone in the gallery, and so every painting is ours to create. Long before science, we filled the sky with gods, hunters, lovers, lions, serpents. We saw patterns where there were none, and yet in doing so, we made meaning. Today we've replaced myth with math. We speak of redshift and hydrogen, not chariots and dragons. But the hunger is the same, to see ourselves in the sky, to feel connected to something more. And even now we write new myths. The prime directive, the great filter, the watchers, the simulators, the garden, the test, each one a modern constellation, mapping our hopes and fears onto the stars. There's a question that echoes quietly in every observatory, every lab, every sleepless moment beneath the stars. If no one is watching, does it still matter? Does art matter if no one sees it? Does kindness matter if no one remembers? Do civilizations matter if they bloom and fade in perfect isolation? We want the answer to be yes, but the silence does not confirm it. So we invent our own truth. We decide it matters because we are here to ask. We choose meaning, not as discovery, but as creation. In a silent universe, to care at all is a kind of rebellion. Sometimes silence is not absence. Sometimes it is invitation. It teaches patience. It reveals what we expect to hear. It shows us what we are when we are not being watched. And in that way, the silence has already shaped us. It has humbled our science, expanded our art, enriched our wonder. We build better telescopes, not just to find aliens, but because we want to know what we're capable of seeking. The silence stretches us, and in the stretch we grow. There is a beauty in unanswered questions. They glow faintly in the night, like the stars themselves, far away but enduring. And if the universe is silent, then that silence is ours to fill. With music, with mathematics, with myth, with dreams, not because we are confident, but because we are brave, because we would rather speak into the void than fall quiet in fear. Because every echo we send into the dark reminds us we are still here. You've listened well, Voyager, through questions older than memory and silences deeper than space. You've walked beside physicists and poets, traced signals through galaxies, and wandered down corridors where even the light holds its breath. And now, the sky stretches quiet above you once more. not as a mystery, not as a question, but as a companion. If the stars are silent, they are not empty. If the cosmos is quiet, it is not cold, it is patient, listening, becoming, just like you. And as your thoughts drift like stardust, let yourself rest in the knowing. That wonder is its own answer, that curiosity is a kind of love, and that even alone, especially alone, we are luminous. Close your eyes and feel the weight of the stars dissolve. You're safe, you're small, you're infinite. And above all, you are not lost. You're exactly where you should be. Here on this blue world, spinning quietly beneath a sky full of stars. Good night, Voyager. Dream well.